How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the channel. So before I get into this video, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has listened, subscribed, watched the huddle breakdown so far. Your support really means a lot, and I really hope you're enjoying the show so far. I'm kind of continuing on the theme of big picture today. I'm going to be looking at the players who are running out of the contracts and what the club should do about it. So let's get straight into it. So as we discussed in the huddle breakdown this week, we're talking about the big picture of Celtic, what Celtic should do going forward with Neil Lennon, with the players, with the assets that they have. And Joko James was essentially saying that they should sell now. All of the assets that they have, they should get rid of them, clear house and start fresh. And I actually thought that, you know what, he's probably onto something there. So I decided to look into the contracts, who's going to be running out of contract, who's going to be decreasing in value over the next couple of years, and what Celtic should do. So let's start with the contracts running out this year, end of the season. There's not that many permanent players that are running out of contract. You got Shane Duffy, Mohamed El Younousi, Diego Laxalt and Scott Brown are running out of contract at the end of the season. So start with Shane Duffy. It's been a monumental disaster for Shane Duffy at Celtic. Honestly, one of the most disappointing signings I've ever seen at the club, and disappointing from a personal point of view as well, because I really thought he was going to be excellent for Celtic. It was a dream move for him to come up, and I'm disappointed for him that it didn't work out. I mean, there's been a lot of personal attacks on Shane Duffy online, and I don't really get behind that at all. He's been a bad player. He hasn't performed to the levels that we thought he was. We're paying him a lot of money at the same time, but at like Shane Duffy, I know that his character is better than this, and I know that he doesn't mean to play bad. There's something going on there. He's not right. He's not playing to the level that he can, and it's just really disappointing from a club's perspective as well, because he could have been that cement block, as I called him, coming into the squad and just cementing up that defense a little bit. Didn't work out. He's not going to be at the club next year, so I don't think there's much point really digging the knife into him much harder. Mohamed El Younousi, he's end of his 2-year loan spell from Southampton. Again, one of these players blows hot and cold, absolutely unstoppable on his day if he's performing to the level he can, but absolutely terrible if he's not up for it. So honestly, I don't think there's much point in Celtic making that a permanent deal. He's not a striker, he's not a winger, he's not really a number 10 either. So he's one of these players that's really hard to define at the minute, and one of these players that Celtic honestly have enough players to do what he does. So I don't think with his high wages that he should be brought on a permanent basis. Diego Laxalt, now he has been pretty good since he signed. Now I've been surprised. He's actually been the opposite kind of player of what I expected. He's really good defensively, really awful going forward. Like his offensive output has been absolutely atrocious, but his defensive actions have been excellent. So there's talk that AC Milan would take a reduced fee of around 6 million. That seems like a lot of money for a left back at the minute, especially the way that Celtic's finances are working out. So I'd be surprised if Celtic got 6 million or so, like got gathered together 6 million for Diego Laxalt. I'd be really surprised if they spent that on a left back. And honestly, is he worth 6 million? Maybe he's not. Scott Brown, coming to the end of his contract, he's probably going to get an extension. There's no point in really hammering home about Scott Brown. He's coming to the end of his career. Unless he retires at the end of the year, he's getting probably a 1-year extension. So let's move on to the contracts expiring in 2022. And this is where it gets really interesting. This is where it's really important to consider the long-term effects of keeping and selling these players, because there's certain players that you definitely want to keep, but it's better off in the long run if you just sell them for the club as a whole. So the key man, obviously, Odsonne Edouard, probably should have sold him last year. We're probably at the stage now where it's a Moussa Dembele situation. Should have sold him for a higher price when they had the chance, and instead they kept a hold of him, hoping that he would have another amazing season like he did the year before, and he actually didn't. He capitulated a little bit, and really he didn't want to be at the club this season. He's going to be leaving at the end of this year. He's 23 years old, and he's worth around £15 million according to Transfer Market. They're not usually that far off when it comes to players' transfer values, but I would say Celtic will try and push for a little bit more than that, maybe 18 to 20 million like they got for Moussa Dembele, but I can't see them getting any more than that. They probably would have got more last season because the market was inflated massively, but also he was playing a lot better. So you're looking at Odsonne Edouard, he's playing a lot worse, and the market has collapsed. So I think across the board, whether it's Premier League, Scottish football, everyone's going to be affected by this. So it's either going to be a lower fee or you're going to get that fee across 4 or 5 years as opposed to getting it straight out. So Celtic's finances are going to be a bit difficult for the next couple of years, so I'd say they will take as much as they can get for odds and Edouard. Ryan Christie is a man that his contract is running out as well in 2022. I can't see him pushing for a move outside of Scotland unless he has ambitions, which I don't think. Honestly, if we're being honest with ourselves, I don't know if Ryan Christie's ambitions can be any further than the Championship or a low Premier League side. So I don't think there's much of a chance that a Premier League side will come and swoop Ryan Christie out of our hands. I think it'll be, if he's moving, he'll be pushing that move. So you're not going to get that much money for Ryan Christie anyway. So, I mean, are you benefiting from selling them, or are you benefiting from having a player the quality of Ryan Christie at Celtic? I think the latter is probably the best way to go about that. Olivier Ntcham at 24 years old, it just feels like his Celtic career has come to a bit of an end, and he probably will get a move to France if he wanted a move. He probably does want to move out of the club at this stage. He hasn't really pushed on to the levels that we thought he would. I mean, again, we're looking at these players, and I find it really hard to criticise them because of the coaching this year, and I want to harness my opinion for what they would be like if it was Brendan Rodgers in charge this year, or a proper coach and there was proper things happening at the club, whereas everybody has decreased in value because everyone's playing poor across the board because they're being coached so badly. So I think Olivier Ntcham's career at Celtics is probably over. At 24 years old, it's time to cash in on what you can get for him, because the longer you put that off, the more likely he is to stay at the club forever and not be worth anything at the end of it. Christopher Iyer is another player that's quite like that, 22 years old. To be fair, he's probably, after Odson Edouard, the most valuable player in that Celtic squad because of his age, because of his experience for his age, and for his qualities as well. He's a defender who he's strong, he's tall, he's athletic, and he's good with his feet. So he is a player that is sought after by the likes of AC Milan and will be sought after for the next couple of years. So at 22 years old, you're probably looking at 10 plus million for him if you're selling him off. So I think the Celtic board will be looking at that, and absolutely Christopher Iyer will be a cash cow for them. So I think Christopher Iyer will be gone. Lee Griffiths, 30 years old, you're not going to sell him. He's not going to be worth any money. And then 2023, I suppose you do have that little bit of a gap there for Christopher Julian, whose contract ends in 2023, which at the base of it, you think you might get another year out of Christopher Julian, but he's 27 years old. So if you keep Christopher Julian for another year, he's 28. Is a club going to take a risk on a 28-year-old defender who has had a history of injuries, especially knee injuries? You're probably unlikely to sell him at 28, 29 years old. So this probably is the market to sell him in and get as much money as you can for him and try build for the future. And the clear out is not as much trying to cash in on these players as it is. Well, it is trying to cash in on these players. It's trying to bring as much revenue as you can into the club, cashing in on your assets so that you can build for the future. And I suppose that's the issue with what most Celtic fans feel, or at least I feel anyway, is that the board will sell these players, but they won't invest back into the club and back into the long-term future of developing players and even just building that scouting network so you can bring quality players in that are good enough for a European level. That needs to happen if they're going to sell these players. History will show you that they won't do that. So that's where I get a little bit negative, but I'm trying not to be negative. I'm trying to just think of the long-term future. So what does that leave you if you do get rid of all these players? So Shane Duffy's gone, El Younoussi's gone. Let's say for the sake of it, Diego Laxalt is gone as well. Odson Edouard, Olivier Ntcham, Christopher Iyer, I will say Chris Julian, just for the sake of it. All those players are gone. Collectively, you've got about 40-50 million for all those players. Maybe that's pushing it a little bit. So what does that leave you? So obviously you've got Barkas, Bain and Hazard for the goals. That hasn't changed. In defence, you have Jeremy Frimpong, who his contract is still until 2023. He's still young enough that you can keep him on and continue developing. Christopher Julian, let's say he's gone. So you've got Welsh, Beaton, Taylor and Ralston. So clearly Celtic need to either develop or buy a centre back, one centre back at the minimum, probably a right back, probably a left back. So 3 defenders you need to bring in. In midfield, we'll presume Scott Brown has renewed his contract for another year. That leaves you with Cal McGregor, Sorrow, Turnbull, Rogic, Forrest, Christie. So that's actually not much of a change. So one thing that I would say if I was a manager coming into that squad is that there's too many number 10s. There's too many players that are exactly the same. So you're probably looking to bring in a midfielder who can change it up a bit. Someone who can play as either a natural number 8, a natural number 10, and a couple of wingers. Or you're going to bring in the wing backs and widen out the area as opposed to playing number 10s. And then up front you've got Albion Ajeti, Patrick Lamala, Lee Griffiths, and Micah Johnson. So, I mean, Micah Johnson's more of a winger than he is a striker. Albion Ajeti is injury prone. Patrick Kamala, does he exist? Is he fit? I mean, I think he's actually been pretty good, and he's pretty young, so he can develop. So it's just about really coaching him, developing him, seeing if he's going to be any good. If he's not going to be any good, just get rid of him. But you're looking at that, and Celtic need a striker badly. There doesn't seem to be any links with any strikers of any sorts that you would say is they're going to go on and absolutely dominate like Mr. Dembele and Odsonne Edouard did over the last couple of years. So that's the main worry for me, and strikers always cost the most money. Celtic don't have all that money, so you're looking at players who are young enough like Mr. Dembele was, but also they've got a high ceiling. So I don't think they should be looking in Scotland for this. I think they should be looking elsewhere, maybe looking to Europe. But the difference is now with Brexit, there's so much change in the market when it comes to just even getting these players in and getting the visas. It's a lot more difficult. So Celtic will likely be looking in the Scotland to England market, maybe Ireland a little bit as well, to get these players. But that is essentially the players who are leaving or could leave this year, and what we will be left with as a core group of players. And that core group of players for me is not, it's barely good enough to win the Scottish League. I don't think it's good enough to compete in Europe anyway. So there's going to be a lot of building to do over the next couple of years. I will probably do a scouting video of players Celtic should sign. There's a whole host of those though. So I'll see if there's any credible links that Celtic have been actually linked with and who they are. Might delve into their stats a little bit, see what they're like, do a little bit of scout on them. But if you want me to do that, just leave a comment below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and let me know what you should think. Should we try keep Odsonne Edouard? Should we try keep these players, or should we just get rid of them and start rebuilding from the bottom up? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm Endicall. This has been Calling It. Thanks for watching.